Hello, and welcome to the Comedian's Paradise. This is the podcast where we speak to very intriguing and fascinating comedians, performers from across the globe that have stories that will fascinate us, inspire us, and that will astound us. Now, today's guest is an absolute wonder. He was the man behind Tinky Winky. He is the man who was in the Teletubbies. He is a comedian that's been going for many decades. And now he is making comedians and audiences laugh in Hungary as well. He is an absolutely remarkable man. Please welcome the brilliant Dave Thompson.
Hi, hello Marvin. Yes, that was me in the costume. I was 8 foot tall with the aerial. And you say making people laugh in Hungary as well. I've actually done professional stand-up gigs now in, I think it's 48 countries.
48?
Outside the UK, and I'm going to be adding to that next month because I'm going back out to Southeast Asia, and I'm hoping to add Cambodia and Vietnam to the list of countries that I performed in.
Whoa! Yes,
Yeah.
that is. There was a couple of stories that I have from there. There's a comedian that went and did a gig for me from Northern Ireland, and he went to Cambodia for a bit, and he told them they were doing gigs, and the guy said, "Oh, you want to do a gig? I'll get you 50 people around." And before he knew it, in the evening, he had 50. He was doing comedy in front of 50 expats.
Wow, it's not like that in Edinburgh.
No, definitely isn't. But yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, Dave? Like how in some places they can't get enough of it, but in where comedy is so saturated, people are like, "Oh, it's comedy. So what? I've got so many things to do."
Yeah, well, they have two categories really, because when you go abroad, you've either got the expats where they want a taste of home and they want to enjoy a cultural experience that they can't normally have unless they're at home, or you're performing to the people from that place or to other foreigners, and you're not performing to British people, you're performing to the international crowd, and then that's very different then.
So that's what Rizal van Gazel told me from Malaysia. Have you done the Malaysian scene?
Yeah, I've done it in Kuala Lumpur. Yeah,
they told me that there's a lot of that over there. Like nearly all of them are a mixture of expats or locals.
Yeah, well, in the ones I've done in Malaysia, it was in the Crack House Comedy Club in Kuala Lumpur, and they were largely Chinese or Chinese or Indian people, with a few Malaysians as well. But in Southeast Asia, a lot of it is you're working for either for or to or both Chinese people and Indian people.
Oh.
Yeah, but very sadly, the comedy club in Kuala Lumpur at the moment has been closed down because they had an open mic night, and a Malaysian girl, did some very strong stuff about Islam, which had a visual element as well, and the club has been closed down, and the owner might go to prison.
Yes, I saw that. It's a big shame. I mean, like we talk about like cancel culture here and all of that, but like there in certain countries, it's so much worse there in terms of how you get cancelled.
But this is coming from the government, not from the people.
I think it's really harsh. I think obviously maybe fair enough they get punished, but like open mic, there's so many things that go on. You don't know what's going to happen. He didn't know that they were going to do that.
No, he didn't know.
I feel it's a bit unfair with Rizal and his comedy club team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. He's a great guy. I know Rizal really well, and he's always been very good to me and treated me very well. And his wife has also been very lovely.
Yeah, they're amazing, and he's very creative as well. I mean, during the pandemic, they did that pizza thing, like they created like a pizza takeaway thing. That was brilliant.
Yeah. They've had me in their home on 2 different visits out there. I've been welcomed and entertained in their home.
Whoa!
Very, very lovely people.
He will. I think he will find some way of working something out because
I hope so.
I've seen that he's still doing a few shows, and so I think maybe in a couple years or 2 or 3 years he'll find some way of getting back.
I hope so, because he's got children to look after.
Yeah, me too. I hope he does. And he was a delight to chat to on the podcast as well. Yeah. Best of luck, Rizar. And if you need any support, we're here.
Yeah, we're here.
And yeah, it's quite a big. It's developing in Southeast Asia, isn't it? Like especially in Singapore and Malaysia. I don't know about like Cambodia or the other nations, but I know that particularly in Singapore and Malaysia, because a lot of them speak English. There's scenes really developing, and their comics are brilliant. Yeah, they're just as good as the ones.
It's a great team. Yeah.
It's
when I was there in 2019, I performed in Yangon, formerly Rangoon, in Myanmar.
Oh, how was that?
Yeah, that was great. I mean, it was in a 4-star hotel. I've actually it was in a 5-star hotel, and again, it was mostly Chinese people in the audience, but it was before it went all a bit tits up over there, so they were still able to have comedians performing and stuff, but then it all went a bit haywire with, again, with government being a bit shitty.
There's a lot of infighting there, isn't there? Like I know that Aung San Suu Kyi went back into there, and then there was a coup, and then there was another coup. There's a lot of like ins and outs going on, which I don't really.
Yeah, well, it's a military dictatorship, isn't it?
But didn't they let her in, like become the boss at some point, and then?
Yeah, she did. She got released. I don't know a lot about it, but she got released from prison, and then she became the sort of figurehead leader. But then there were people. I think the treatment of the Muslim Chinese people in China they were going. I think they were fleeing from persecution in China, or no, they're already maybe in Myanmar. Anyway, they were being treated badly, and I think people were then going to Aung San Suu Kyi saying, hang on, we thought you were a good person and a liberal, but how come all these atrocities have been allowed to take place? I think that's what it was. But then again, when you're in that position, she probably had no choice, and she probably had a choice between being thrown out and put back in prison or turning a blind eye to the atrocities that were going on. It's difficult in those situations, isn't it?
So she was going to lose either way.
Yeah, exactly. She was in a lose-lose situation.
It's amazing. Southeast Asia is an amazing place in terms of comedy. There's so many things going on there. I mean, especially that guy he really helped build the scene there, but he's now no longer with us. But he spoke like 10 languages or something. What's his name?
The Australian guy. Yeah, I never met him, but I heard a lot about him. But Southeast Asia is a very interesting place to do comedy. It's also a lot sunnier and hotter than Europe during January and February, which is why I'm going to be there. I don't like the European winter, so I'd rather be performing and wearing flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt during the day.
You're not going to wear a suit like Earl Oaken does during.
Well, I might wear a suit in the evenings, but I basically want to be in a hot, sunny place in January and February. And for 2 years running, I went to South Africa, and I did Johannesburg and Cape Town in January to get away from the European winter.
That, from what I spoke to a comic who moved from Zimbabwe to South Africa, and he said that South Africa is proper like iffy. Like we get into trouble in the UK for saying dark or offensive things, but he told me that when you gig in certain places like Soweto or the townships, if you go on stage, you may die twice. He said that there was some guy that was with a gun in his pocket and said, "Look at my gun."
Yeah, well, in Zimbabwe again, you've got to worry about the government, and the secret police and so on. But the comedy club in Johannesburg, they actually have a gun safe, and as people arrive at the comedy club, they have to surrender their guns, and the guns get put in a gun safe before they're allowed in the club.
He told me that South Africa is a very interesting place, and it's like customary to get robbed there. Was it like that with you?
Well, it is. The thing is, it makes it. That's why I'm not going again. It makes it unviable because it's a lovely place. It's a wonderful country, but when you are gigging there, you can't walk to the venue in the evenings, and there's no public transport to speak of. So you have to get an Uber from your accommodation to the gig. And if you're doing 2 gigs in different venues that night, you have to get an Uber between the 2 venues and then an Uber home. And the cost of the Ubers mount up to make it not really financially viable to go and work there.
Ah, yes, it's too.
You can't walk around, you can't walk around at night.
You can't just say hello to strangers.
Well, they might say hello to you first.
Were you scared when you went to South Africa?
No, I wasn't scared. One time I went out running, and this was in Cape Town. I went out running and I got lost, and I ended up like where there were these 2 guys looking at me, and I could see that they were looking around and then looking at me and then looking around, and they were obviously assessing whether it was worth attacking me, and because they know that the very minimum they're going to get a pair of running shoes. That's the entry level of the mugging. It's going to be a pair of running shoes.
Are you saying it's like a degree over there? You have to go through different qualifications?
Well, I mean, in terms of mugging, yeah, never mind about what I might have in a pocket or anything. They know that I've got a pair of running shoes because they can see them on the end of my legs. But I did the Cape Town Comedy Club there when I was there, which is on the waterfront in Cape Town. It's all very, very lovely, but it's a big room. And I went there 2 years running and headlined it for a week. And afterwards, I came to the conclusion that if I was going to go again, I'd rather just go there on holiday and enjoy myself, because it's a lot of stress when you're on last in the Cape Town Comedy Club. It's a big venue, and it's like the wages at that time worked out for the headliner. The wages worked out to about £50.
Whoa!
And it was like £300 worth of pressure for £50 every night. And I just thought, no, actually, I'd rather just not have the £50 a night and not have to go through that much pressure.
Well, I mean, did they like you? Did you go well?
They did. I mean, I did go well, but it's quite hard because the shows go on a long time, and it's very different culturally. And also, you've got, of course, pay for the Uber to get there and the Uber to get back to your accommodation. So that comes out of your £50 wages.
That just sounds like a trip in the comedy from going from Birmingham to London doing a paid gig.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But a bit more dangerous.
Now, with one thing I've noticed, South Africans, they seem to have a very, like, they don't tolerate bullshit attitude. Whenever I come across a lot of them, they're very, very no nonsense. Whenever each South African I come across, that seems to be their attitude.
Yeah, well, it depends, of course, about which South Africans you're talking about, because they vary a lot. But yes, there is a bluntness and an openness which I like. I was told when I was there that like in South Africa, the people of white British descent are a lot more robust than, say, for example, the ones in Australia, because apparently in the days of the Empire, when the ships were going to Australia and New Zealand, they would stop at Cape Town in South Africa on the way, and the people who got off at South Africa were the more sort of less educated, more working class people. I don't quite know how this fits in with the fact that it was often criminals being sent to Australia, but that's what they told me. So that the white people who ended up living in South Africa were from a sort of a lower social class than the white people who ended up living in Australia and New Zealand, convicts accepted.
Oh, okay.
And so they all went up, to Rhodesia and what have you, and so they come from that sort of background of more uneducated working class culture. Whereas, for example, the British people who ended up living in Kenya tended to be more of the upper class people and aristocrats, because they went and they became the gentleman farmers in the hills above Nairobi, around Nairobi, where they do all their cattle ranching and stuff. And that's why they have all. This is what right off the subject of comedy now, but where they had that whole thing about the bloke who got murdered. There was some earl got shot in the head, and they never solved the crime. It still remains unsolved, and it was called, they made a film about it called White Mischief. Someone wrote a book called White Mischief about it, and then they made a film called White Mischief, and that was, the title was responding to a book by Evelyn Waugh called Black Mischief, and that was written about Kenya, along in the middle of the 20th century. But anyway, the people who, the white British people who ended up living in Kenya tended to be more from the sort of upper class public school background.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
And that even though that was a long time ago, the repercussions still carry on. So that might be why you made the comment about people in South Africa being, no bullshit and telling you as it is, because they came from that more sort of Hi, I think we lost the signal a bit.
Yes, I think we did. You said we're up to the bit about that's why I thought people from South Africa were no nonsense, because they're from the convicts.
Yeah,
and
they come from the lower social class, or maybe I should say like a different social class. Otherwise, it sounds snobby. But when I was there in Cape Town, I was doing the last time I was there, I was doing like a week performing in the Cape Town Comedy Club, which is a great club, and the people who run it are really nice people to deal with. But there was a girl there who was a black South African girl, and she was very young, like in her early 20s, like really early 20s, and she was doing guest spots and sort of, just on the very, very first attempts and experiments about doing stand-up. And I put her name on the guest list so that she could come to a show without having to pay. She wasn't at that level where they would let her in for free, And we were talking, and she was very, obviously very ambitious and very well dressed, and obviously came from quite a wealthy family, by the standards of South Africa. So she worked very hard in an office job in the daytime, and she was very well dressed with sort of quite expensive, very smart clothes. And she really cared about her appearance. She had her hair done nice and jewellery, and quite sophisticated, and obviously, a sort of I'm going places and I'm a successful person sort of vibe about her. And we were sitting chatting in the sort of social area of the dressing room after the show, and I don't know how it came up in conversation, but I said about there was that slogan in South Africa amongst the black South Africans some years ago called, and it was "One settler, one bullet," and that was a big slogan: "One settler, one bullet." What it basically meant was, white person, one bullet to kill them. And I mentioned this thing about one settler, one bullet, and she, without blinking or flinching or hesitating, said, "Yeah, I still believe in that." And I sort of thought, oh, okay, right. I just got you in for free. I just bought you a drink. I'm trying to be, include you and everything, and like give you a leg up. And I introduced her to the owner of the club, and she just without hesitation said, "Yeah, I would like to shoot every white person dead." It's quite funny.
What did they say? What was it?
I think we just changed the subject.
I'm joking. Fine, let's change it.
She didn't pull a gun out of her handbag, that's for sure.
Right, that's quite a story. But also in South Africa, there's a bit of where there's quite a few poor white South Africans as well now. Like there's since.
I think there are, yeah. I mean, I haven't been there since before the pandemic, but yes, there are a lot of poor people, and people are struggling a lot as well. Someone told me that well, I know this guy who's a South African guy, and he said that if you want to, marry a pretty young white South African girl, it's not difficult because the South Africans have South African passports, and that's very restricts on where they can go. And if you want to marry one, then there'll be a lot of pretty young white South African girls who are only too keen to marry anybody who can get them out of South Africa.
So just show your British passport out. Hello.
Yeah, and they'll marry it. Yeah. This is not a subject I ever intended to get into. I'm sure there a lot of people would be, sharpening their knives if they sort of heard me saying this sort of thing. I'm not advocating any of this. I'm just reporting what I've seen and heard.
Of course. I didn't plan to talk about it, but you never know what's going to happen.
I'm not on any dating sites in South Africa.
No, this is going to be an interesting segue, Dave.
Yeah.
We're both from Britain, and we've spoken about South Africa, that you're in Hungary now.
Yeah.
But we had a little chat earlier in terms of comedy in Hungary, because there's quite a lot of mixture. Is there any sort of similarities you notice from your time of being in TV as Tinky Winky, and then your time doing comedy in different nations? Is there anything you've noticed in terms of similarity, like maybe in the coldness of audiences, or because you mentioned that you said in TV that TV can be quite brutal, and in some ways is the brutality that you see to TV similar to what you would see in some of the nations you go to in terms of if audiences
I think humans are humans wherever they are and whatever they're doing, and you get human traits, but they are very different fields, really, because doing the Teletubbies, there was no audience there, so we weren't performing to audiences, we were performing to cameras, and the people that we were dealing with were the producers and the people who ran the whole TV company. And that's very different, obviously, from dealing with members of the public who play evening's entertainment in Prague, But I think, on the whole, show business is sort of pigs around the trough. And if you go into working in the arts or into comedy or acting, you are a pig around the trough, and there's not enough room to get your snout into the trough, and there's not enough swill in the trough to feed everybody as much as they want to eat. So as a result, it's very competitive, and with the higher the stakes, the more treacherously people are prepared to behave. So it's all about, it can, not always, but it can be a lot about money, status and power. And where there's money, status and power at stake, people will stab people in the back and do whatever's necessary to get that money, status and power.
So you're saying that show business is like Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I haven't actually seen Game of Thrones, although some of it was filmed in Hungary, and I know people who are in it. But yes, it is. I mean, it was ever thus. I think to share around, and the more decently these people behave, and there are always exceptions when people will, deny themselves and sacrifice themselves to behave decently to somebody else in terrible circumstances. But one has to be prepared for the fact that people might behave horribly to you. And television is, because the stakes are so high and there's so much money and status and power concentrated into that screen, and what happens on the screen and what people, see on the screen, that some people will behave in a particularly horrible way. I was once told by a producer that he was told in the early part of his career, there are 3 rules for working in television. Number 1, you put money in front of anything else. Number 2, never tell the truth where a lie will do. And number 3, don't ever hesitate to stab somebody in the back.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's whoa. That's I mean, the last bit's a lot of advice that your mummy and daddy would tell you not to do, but
yeah. But having said that, there are also lots of really lovely people, and most of my friends are comedians, and there's a great brotherhood stroke sisterhood amongst comedians, because we're all on our own. We're on our own when we're on stage. We're on our own beforehand when we're preparing to go on stage and feeling nervous and insecure. And we're on our own afterwards, whether it's been a great gig, in which case we're feeling fantastic, but it's our own personal success. It's not one that we've shared with other people as an ensemble. And we're on our own with the failure and the gloom if it's gone badly. It's a very solitary thing. And I think people compensate for that by having an understanding. There's an understanding amongst comedians and a bond, because we are all lone wolves, and only other comedians know what it feels like to be a lone wolf. So you can go to Kuala Lumpur or Singapore or probably Sydney in Australia and go into a comedy club, and straight away you'll talk to other comedians, and it's like you've known each other for years, because you all know what it's like, and you've all got common experience.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would like to put more to, as you mentioned everything there, is that I do love talking to other comics about comedy. I think being disciplined enough to avoid the other things which could incriminate you or people could twist, as you said, that stuff. I think one thing I do love talking to other comics is comedy, and comedians will freely talk about it. It's very interesting comedy. Like, it's like a puzzle all the time, trying to figure out why this works or that works.
Yeah.
But I do, as you said, I did notice that during my time in Goliath, that there's a lot of similarities with comedians and actors. But I think the one thing that comedians do have more so than actors is we deal with rejection maybe better.
Yeah. But there is a lot of similarity. And also, you talk about the clown. Most of what Philippe Gaulier teaches is the august clown. They have different categories of clowns. So they've got like the Piero, and they've got the august. And when we talk about the clown, we're probably thinking of the august clown as opposed to the Piero.
Yeah.
Because the Piero is still fits the description of a clown, but they're not always trying to be funny. They're the ones with the little white cap and the frilly collar, and they in the video for Let's Dance by David Bowie.
Yeah,
that's they dress as a Piero, and the Pieros, what you get in seaside resorts, you'd get a team of Pieros, and they would all just sing songs or play musical instruments, and they wouldn't do any comedy or try to be funny in any way, but they were still technically clowns. And then in a circus, you get the Piero is a sort of authority figure who's bossing the other clowns around, and the ones who are the sort of low status buffoon idiots are the augusts. And that's what we think of when we think of clown. And in America, they often call that the hobo. So it's not just the august, it's the hobo. They call it the hobo clown. And in stand-up comedy, there are different types of personae. So, for example, I'm trying to think of an example now. Like some comedians would be. So, have you heard of Sean Meo, for example?
Yeah, he's
a brilliant comic. He lives in London. Pardon?
Oh.
Sean Meo is Sean Meo is an example of a smart-ass comedian, right? And Jack D is another example of a smart-ass comedian, where they're high status and they are talking down about things. That their whole stance is of one of superiority and being high status. So that would be one example of a type of stand-up comedian persona. And another example of a stand-up comedian persona would be the lovable buffoon. And they are very much have a lot in common with the clown. So, for example, Tim Vine, Harry Hill, Eric Morecambe, from Morecambe and Wise, Tommy Cooper, and Rick Mayall when he did stand-up comedy, because he started out as a stand-up comedian.
Oh.
That the lovable buffoon type of comedian is very similar to the clown. Steve Martin when he used to do stand-up comedy.
Okay? And did you say that the main stand-up comedy personas are 3 types? Did you say?
No, there's an academic theory which says that there are 9 types of persona, 9 different personae of stand-up comedians. Okay. And 2 of them are smart ass and lovable buffoon.
Which would you say you are? What's you are?
Well, I think I've got a lot of lovable buffoon in me because I'm also, I like the clown type approach, and I've also had a character I do called Naughty the Clown, which is a clown, which I have done at various times, not necessarily in the stand-up environment as a self-contained act, but in various contexts I've done my Naughty the Clown character. And that he is a clown. He says he's a clown. It's in the title, Naughty the Clown.
It's funny you mention all the personas in clown. You mentioned about stand-up. Yeah, there's like 3 different types of clowns as well, isn't there? I know there was 3 that are pointed out to me. Like you said, there's the character clown, and then there's 3 different main types, isn't there, of clowns? Like the white face, the August, and the character clown. They're the main ones, right?
What's the one you say? The counter clown?
The character clown.
The character clown. Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I don't know. Isn't the character clown just an August, but wearing a costume?
When I went to Golia, there was a guy who told me briefly about the different categories of clowns.
Oh, right. But there's also the bouffon as well. And he used to do a separate workshop on the bouffon, which I never did. I wish I had, but I never did it. And apparently Sacha Baron Cohen, he did the clown and he also did the bouffon. And what he does in his films, with Ali G and Borat and the other ones, he's basically being the bouffon, apparently.
It's funny what he does in terms of he makes you think you're the idiot, but he's actually making a fool out of you. Whilst Tommy Cooper is the idiot in whatever he does. Yeah,
well, the bouffon has another level, and obviously the word bouffon is linked to our word the buffoon, but it doesn't mean the same thing. The French word bouffon and bouffon in the context of what Philippe Gaulier taught is a different entity from the buffoon or the clown.
It's quite but I do feel that with the Gaulier, it's something that I really want to get into. I would like to study more about the clowning that they use in circuses, because a part of what I see in Gaulier is that's more theatre-based rather than actually sort of circus-based. And I've seen a few things, and I think there's things that are missing from what Gaulier teaches in terms of the circus.
Yeah, well, he's a teacher, isn't he? I mean, he did. I know he's fantastic and everything, but he stopped performing and became a teacher. And so when you become a teacher and you're just talking the talk and not walking the walk, obviously it's going to become a different dynamic from if you were talking to somebody who just walked off stage after entertaining a theatre full of 2,000 people.
What do you feel of how true would you say the statement is, if you want to get better at something, you need to teach it? Rather than...
if you want to get better at something as a teacher?
Yeah, if you want to understand what you do more, teach it to someone else. That's a common thing that I always hear from people.
Yeah. Well, if you want to understand what you do more, you can spend time thinking about what you're doing. Self-videoed and watch the videos, and that will tell you a lot. But otherwise, yes, you can go to people who, there are people, aren't there, who do coaching and who do directing for comedians. And some of them, I think, are probably very good. And I think others, I suspect, and I don't know, but I suspect some of them might be doing that because they can't get work as a comedian. And so the next, it's a classic cliche, isn't it? Those that can do, those that can't teach. So, if you go to Lee Mack and say, Lee Mack, can you teach me about comedy? The answer is going to be, well, sorry, I'm doing a very busy tour and then I've got a TV show and I'm too busy being funny to teach you funny, But if you go to someone else who's there saying, well, I'm not doing any performing, I'm here and I'm available to teach you how to be funny, the chances are that they probably haven't got the answers, because if they had the answers, they'd be doing it themselves. So if you're a comedian and you can't get enough gigs and you need to pay the bills, what do? You teach workshops.
You're being very brutal here.
I might be being brutal, and what I'm saying is not true to everybody who teaches. So, for example, John Gordillo, he teaches comedy and he does directing and coaching. And if I had the money and time, I would go to John and I would lap up everything he's got, because I know John well enough to know that he is a brilliant comedian, and he chose, for whatever reasons best known to him, he chose to take his foot off the accelerator with his own performing and spend time teaching and facilitating other people in their performing. And so I wouldn't include in that category. I don't question for 1 second his amazing insights and brilliance and his ability to help people get funnier. But there are other people out there who I suspect maybe aren't that great and don't have all the answers. But I don't want to be denigrating. Teaching is a great thing, and some people are more able to teach than they are to do it, and they can help you and lead you. But I think that for everyone who's a genuinely good teacher who could take you somewhere and help you get funnier, there are probably several who are just a failed comedian, and this is their secondary way of trying to make some money.
Yeah, it is. No, it is. That is. Yeah. I don't want to.
I might be wrong. I'm not saying I'm right. I could be wrong, but I don't know. I don't care whether I'm right or wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're at the point where you don't. It's.
Well, I don't feel any need to bring other people around to my opinion. My diary next week consists of flying to Holland and touring around Holland doing stand-up comedy. That's what I care about. I care about whether those audiences find me funny and whether the promoters ask me to come back and perform there again. That's what I care about. But whether my opinion on something is right or wrong, I don't really care about it.
It's just
because we're all idiots. We're all stupid idiots groping around in the dark. And I don't claim to be anything other than an idiot groping around in the dark.
And would you say, yeah, that's a one of the things at the circuit is a lot of when we grow up in the circuit or when we're building up, we worry so much about those things. Well, so you really couldn't give a toss. You would just let it all out there. And
the thing is that people change their view, don't they? So, you meet a politician who's age 60 and they probably have very different opinions to what they had when they were 30. And they probably had different opinions to what they had when they were 20. So whether it's views on politics or whether it's views on other things, as we go through life, we change and develop our opinions. So if I'm talking to a 25-year-old and they're, telling me what they think, I'm getting a window into what they think. But I know that in 25 years' time, when they're 50, they might have a different opinion and a different view. So, how valid is a view when it's probably going to change, and it probably has changed already from what it was, a year ago, or some time ago. So we're all, we're only humans, and we are humans as a species are a load of complete idiots, aren't we? We're killing ourselves and a whole load of other species off with our behavior. We're collectively committing suicide as a species. So how would we expect to have any sense or valid opinions from any of us?
Oi, don't make us cry. Don't make us upset. Yeah. that's when we're yeah. You don't want to. You don't try and pander, be anything. You just be yourself, and this is what I think, rather than trying to say, "Oh, I'm this" or "I'm that." You just get straight to the point.
Yeah, well, I do what feels right to me, and I do what I think at the time is right. But and I try not to hurt other people. It's not like I'm so cynical. I'm saying, well, all humans are all killers. so I might as well just go into a McDonald's with a samurai sword and slash away and kill a whole load of families. You know, I'm not that cynical, but I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't make any attempt to get another person to come round to my views on insert name of concept or political situation or war or British politician or strike or whatever it might be. You know, I feel no need to bring any other people around to what I think. If they, you know, they can think what they think, and I'll think what I think, and I don't feel any need to sway anyone else round to what I think. I mean, obviously, if someone was holding a knife at my throat and they believed that I should die now, I would probably be trying to persuade them that.
With sort of clowning and doing comedy,
yeah.
One thing I want to say about that: would you ever do that to try and put off a mugger? Like if you were in one of these, would you ever try and use some of the techniques to put people off?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I have also been of martial arts for many years. I study Aikido, which is a Japanese martial art, and they say in clowning that the greatest clown needs do nothing. And they say in martial arts, the greatest martial artist or the greatest warrior need do nothing. And there is a lot in common between martial arts and clowning. And one of the things that is in common is that you move the person's mind. So if you're a comedian on stage telling a joke, you do the setup and then you move their mind with the punchline and they laugh, hopefully. And if someone attacks you and tries to mug you, then ideally you move their mind so that their attack is deflected and you're able to neutralize it.
But clowning is a little bit different to that, though, isn't it? In terms
there's a lot in common and there's a lot different, but there is a lot similar. But if someone tried to attack me, first of all, I would try not to put myself in a situation where I was likely to be attacked. But then if I did have a situation where someone tried to mug me, I would try to move their mind. And yes, that might involve some sort of comedy or lightheartedness.
You would charm them. You would.
Ideally, yeah, I would try to, because the person is not, now, as they say in martial arts, it's not the knife or the gun that's dangerous, it's the person holding the knife or the gun. And if you can change their mind, then the gun or the knife is no longer a threat.
Okay. Of course. It's a bit like verbal judo, isn't it?
It is like verbal judo, yeah. I mean, the beauty of clowning and comedy is that we can theorize as much as we like, but you can't actually ever replace the actual real thing. You know, the authentic moments of something being funny, or somebody tripping over and dropping a tray full of glasses or whatever it is. You know, that is the pure event, and that is the moment. And anything other than that moment is just theorizing and becomes academic theory.
Okay. Well, what would you say, with clowning being different, with stand-up being different, what would you say is the process of creating funny bits with a clown, and how is it different to stand-up? Because I've noticed when I try and do clowning, if I set something up and I'm not too sure where things are going to go, I can create something funny. But when I know certain things and I try and recreate it, that is where it's difficult. But with stand-up, if you have a joke and you know it works, you can sort of repeat it and again, but you've got to change certain things so it feels like you're delivering a new joke
Yeah.
rather than scripted.
Well, a comedian is more in control because a comedian is doing a joke, and so they've sort of probably got it planned, and they are working within certain parameters and a certain comfort zone in a way. So, for example, I walk on stage to tell some jokes, and I take the mic out of the stand, and the wire falls out of the mic and drops on the floor, and that moment is the clown. Because I didn't intend it to happen, and before I've even opened my mouth to tell my first joke to the audience, something's gone wrong and I'm lost control, and they laugh, not because I made them laugh, but because they saw something going wrong and they saw me in a vulnerable situation where I've lost control, and I then have to, bend over, pick the mic wire up, find how it fits back into the mic and plug it back in before I can then start on my first joke, which was the planned, rehearsed bit of the act. So that moment when I take the mic out of the stand and the lead falls out unexpectedly, that's the clown. That's when the clown comes in.
But one of the things that I found interesting, that when you try and recreate that, it's completely gone. Like, I know that there was, do you know Vigo Ven?
No, I don't think so.
Well, he did some incredible thing where he beat the Comedy Gong Show, where he just did some funny dance where he was just taking his top off. He would listen to a dance song and it just, and that seemed to work. And it is quite planned, but you can feel like he's enjoying it and he's going to flow, and it works brilliantly. And if I were, as you mentioned, a microphone, even though where you know where certain points are, like sometimes when I'm doing magic, I know I sometimes fail about it and it works. And I'm still, even though I know I'm deliberately doing the magic so it fails, I know what points to hit, it's still not quite as effective as when the first time I do it where it fails.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that it's about the moment. I mean, comedy is about the moment between the audience and the performer. I'm talking about live comedy. And whether you're a clown or whether you're a stand-up, your substance with which you're working is the moment between you and the audience. Whereas an artist paints a painting, and hundreds of years after they're dead, that painting is still a work of art. It might change its context, but the painting is a static thing and it can exist after they're dead. But with us, when we do a stand-up comedy performance, by the time the audience have walked across the car park and unlocked the car, they've forgotten it. It's over. They might have some memories of it, but they've probably forgotten our name and it's over. What I'm talking about is it's an ephemeral thing. Our substance is time, and it's the moment, and it's an ephemeral thing, as opposed to a novelist or a painter who does something and then that thing then exists after they're dead.
Or it could be like they remember us forever as someone that scared them on stage, or like we were so bad that we convinced them to do comedy.
Yeah, well, that can happen, but also like memories are different from the moment, aren't they? So people can have memories of a comedy performance, but that's different from the moment in which they experience a comedy performance.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that annoys me when I hear people talk about comics like Louis C.K. or some of the big names. They say, "Oh, he's not that funny. I've seen him on TV." Of course he's not. You're not there seeing him and seeing how good he is.
Different medium. Yeah.
That annoys me when I hear that.
As soon as it becomes videoed and you're watching it on a screen, it's a different medium. And it's amazing how many people have only watched comedy on their phone and they've never seen it live in a room. And when they watch it live in a room, it's a revelation for them, because they thought they understood the medium of stand-up comedy, but what they're doing is they're watching it on their phone or on their TV, it's still stand-up comedy, but it's a different medium to being in a room in a group of people who are all experiencing a comedian together.
It really annoyed me. Someone said, "Oh, I watched a bit of Louis C.K. and it was, I did some bit, it was just as good." But you not seen him live, how good he is or how good he is. Stop trying to judge on the TV screen. I don't know. I just feel it's disrespectful to someone who's as good a comic as him. I mean, as a person, I wouldn't want him near my daughter, but I mean, as a comedian, he is bloody amazing.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be locked in a room with him.
No, definitely not. I wear masks, so nothing.
You'd wear PPE.
Yes, COVID mask. Yeah.
Poor guy's never going to live that down, is he?
But comedy is treated with a lot of disrespect, and it's that people treat it wrongly. They think it's just, do you find it sometimes annoying when you talk about comedy and people treat it with, like it's just throwing a nappy on you, or like?
Well, it's given all sorts of treatment, isn't it? But it was always the same, I mean, at one time, comedians would be the court jester, wouldn't they? And then it was all about entertaining the king. And if the king was displeased, you'd have your head cut off.
Yeah, I mean, we complain about comedy now when it doesn't work in front of audiences.
But a bad gig then was a lot worse.
It's a great little thing we do, though. I mean, it's the feeling we get when it works well is amazing. But
the highs are high and the lows are low. There was I saw a really funny cartoon once when I was a kid, long before I ever became a comedian, and the cartoon was of the classic sort of cliche of the people in the dungeon when they're sort of on the chains up with their arms and their wrists in rings, iron rings that were attached into the wall of the dungeon. And there's someone's just been thrown into a dungeon, and there's a court jester chained to the wall, hanging there on the wall. And the caption is the court jester saying to the person who's just been thrown in, "It was going so well until I mentioned the Queen's moustache." I always thought that was just a really funny, brilliant cartoon, but you just set up the whole scenario in your head that the court jester is entertaining the king and the queen and maybe a few other courtiers, and the gig's going really well, and he gets a bit overconfident and he refers to the Queen's moustache, at which moment suddenly the gig's over and he's led away and thrown into a dungeon and chained to the wall.
But I mean, nowadays, most of the time we just have to do it figuratively in the mind.
Nowadays, the equivalent would be that someone reports that you did something inappropriate and you end up being cancelled.
Yeah, so it's not that bad, is it? Being now, I've listened to like a couple of podcasts you said before, and you said one of the biggest advice in comedy, and it's quite obvious, you say, don't be a prick. And just be...
Don't be a prick?
Well, effectively, you said, be nice to people and don't be an arsehole.
Oh, right, okay. Did I say that?
It was in that interview that I mentioned you with the American guys. They said you mentioned just be nice to people.
Yeah, sorry, we had another little outage then.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you want to go back or not, but you froze on my screen, so you might want to go back and do that a bit again in case we lost it.
Okay. So in another podcast that I saw you on, you said that one of the advice you give to performers or entertainers, is to be just don't be a cunt. Is that still something you would sort of stand by now, like in terms of like just be all right, be easygoing, don't be a pushover, but be cool?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think I would extend that to everything in life. Whatever. If you work in a shop or walking down the street or on a bus or anything. But I think in comedy, we've got enough problems as it is, and it's enough of a challenge as it is, without creating problems that don't need to exist by creating enemies. Why create enemies? And there's the old cliche, which is, be nice to people up on the way up, because you're going to meet them again on the way down.
And I don't know whether I heard it from you, but I heard this from someone where if you spend so much time, like if you stab someone in the back, you will spend so much time looking over your shoulder rather than on your actual job at hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, different people have their own standards, but personally, I would rather be, you know, treat people decently and hope that that will come back to me, rather than, you know, behave in a nasty way to people and be looking over my shoulder. Not everyone has that approach, but that's always been my approach.
Some people are.
But also, goodwill is priceless, isn't it? You know, if you've got goodwill, then it's worth a lot more than sometimes millions of pounds in the bank is.
But the £1 million does help.
Well, it does help. I mean, if you can have goodwill and £1 million in the bank, then that's true success.
Who's, would you say, like, with all the comedians or performers you've been with, who's like someone you feel that is, despite with all these things going on, like despite their success, despite all these things going on, they've remained grounded? Because I think if you look at Conor McGregor, the success he's had has completely got him off kilter, and like the amount of skill or like it will take a lot of discipline and work to remain grounded if you achieve certain thresholds. And who is someone, would you say, has achieved such a great threshold but has remained quite grounded?
I think Harry Hill has remained grounded. And Ben Elton, he's remained very grounded.
What do you think it is about those two in particular that has made them able to keep up?
I think it's because they come from, I think they had good parenting in their early days, but also they're family people. You know, I think if you have a family, and no matter how well last night's gig went, but today you're looking after children and you're with a girlfriend or wife or husband or whatever, then I think that's a very grounding thing. Whereas the people who don't get married or don't have a constant relationship are more likely to spend that time, you know, with the bottle or the crack pipe.
Is there a crack pipe there?
Yeah, I cover all bases personally. There's always a crack pipe. There's the, if it's not a crack pipe, it's a symbolic. You know, it's just another version of the crack pipe.
It's LSD or it's.
Yeah, I mean, for people, you know, for comedians in show business, there's gambling, you know, the horse racing, driving too fast. You know, there are always that someone. I was watching when I was a kid. I was watching a documentary about Elton John, and this was like before Elton John was even anything like as successful as he became. And the person on the documentary, the narrator said that many people can live with failure, but not many people can live with success. And I thought that was a very insightful thing. So, you know, most people in the entertainment business don't become successful, and lots of people are able to live with failure. But the ones who become really successful, not all of them are able to live with success. So sometimes it can go that you're a failure, but you stay alive, or you're a massive success, but you end up being killed by it.
Figuratively or literally.
Yeah. So, you know, people, you know, they do it in whatever way. You know, they crash a car, or they drink themselves to death, or, you know, whatever it is that they do, whatever vice gets hold of them. But if you, I think if you have family, then you're less likely to go off the rails, because having children to look after is a very grounding experience. not all, you know. I mean, obviously, I think with so many times it's hard to theorize. You have to just look at an individual and comment on an individual person rather than just generalize about, you know, everyone, and then it becomes a lot more vague and more likely to be inaccurate.
Yes, true. Okay. Well, I've got a few more years to be less of a cunt. So.
Well, I hope I have too.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone who's listening right now, how do they find out about you and like your work?
They probably can't because I don't really make any effort to publicize myself. Having said that, this is probably like going to get dated very quickly, but I am teaching a clowning workshop on Saturday, the 25th of February, 2023. So if anyone is interested in doing a clowning workshop in London, and it's not yet Saturday, the 23rd of February, 2023, sorry, 25th, it's not yet Saturday, the 25th of February, 2023, then they could go, it's that run by Alfie Notes at We Are Funny Project.
Oh, okay.
They could go on We Are Funny Project and look up to do my clowning workshop on the 25th of February 2023. If it's after then just disregard that completely, unless you've got a time machine. And the following week, Saturday the 4th of March, I'm teaching a workshop in stand-up comedy in London for Alfie Notes and the We Are Funny Project. But on a more broad level, I did write a novel which is loosely based on my own life, and it's called The Sex Life of a Comedian. And it's available on lulu.com or Amazon. It's on Amazon Kindle, but there's also a paperback version which you can buy through Amazon. But I do hastily add that there are lots of scenes of sex and drug taking, and it's only suitable if you're over the age of 35.
Oh, okay. Why 35?
Well, I just said that. It's not for people who are under the age of 18, you know, because it does have lots of sex and drug taking in it. Okay. There is a story. There's like a sort of a thriller story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you take out all of the sex and drug taking, but it's about a stand-up comedian who works on the comedy circuit and then gets a job wearing a blue furry costume in a world-famous TV show.
Ah, okay.
Exact. But it's a mythologization of my life.
Okay. Well, that's great.
Yeah. It's called The Sex Life of a Comedian by Dave Thompson. So if you want to buy the novel, then, and if you're interested in comedy and what it's like being a comedian, then you might find it interesting. Some people love it. Certain celebrities of you know, it's talked about in the Groucho Club as being a great work. Other people, it's not their cup of tea. I never got around to, I was going to have it published by a proper publisher, but then I fell out with them and I self-published it, and I've never got around to properly promoting it because when I had children, everything just went out the window basically. So it still doesn't have a proper cover with a picture on it, but it's got endorsements by Ben Elton and Harry Hill on the cover. Yeah, you know, I think it's the best thing. But you know, it's the same with any novel, isn't it? Or, you know, any sort of work of art. Some people like it, some people don't like it.
Okay. Yeah, send me the link for it, and I'll put it in the episode.
Oh, great. Okay, cheers. Yeah, we'll do.
And if they want to see you live, where do they go?
Well, they just go and see me at some shitty comedy club somewhere. That's because that tends to be what I do. I've never really I should do, but I've never really done, like worked up a whole 1 hour show. I mean, I have done it. I did one in Edinburgh once. I did a 1 hour show in Edinburgh a long time ago. But I'm not really an Edinburgh sort of guy. I don't really like Edinburgh. And at that time in August, I'd much rather be lying on a beach in the Mediterranean somewhere than being in a fucking shitty, rainy country. So I don't bother with Edinburgh. I just do what I do, you know. I mean, I do whatever screen acting I can do, and in between it, I do stand-up comedy. So I don't know where you'll see me. You know, you just might walk into a comedy club on stage performing. You know, or probably by the law of averages, I won't be. But I don't really care anyway.
Well, if they come to see you, it'll be nice. But if not, no worries.
Yeah, I'm not that bothered. You know, go and see someone else. They're probably funnier than me.
What about the law of averages? You got to compare the laughs per minute.
Yeah, well, true. But again, see, there's we go with all these things about who's better than who, or comedy competitions and all this stuff, because it's an art form, and you know, it's not a sport. You know, if I wanted to be better than someone else, or I wanted to know what my position was in a pecking order or a status hierarchy, I'd have become an athlete, or I'd have joined the armed forces, and then I'd know what my rank is. But I'm a comedian. I'm an artist, and I do it. I mean, I need to be commercial to earn money to support my children and my ex-wife, but beyond that, I do it as an art form, and it's a self-expression. It's an artistic quest, and a spiritual quest even, and I do it to satisfy myself and to explore and to express my inner life, to map out my inner life into the world around me. And it's an art form, and you know, we all have our own plough to furrow, so I don't care whether, you know, another comedian is considered better than me or worse than me, because you know, quite frankly, in my world, it makes no difference.
Yeah, but in Edinburgh, you achieve all of that, but you'd be so broke.
Well, I've been, you know, luckily, I'm somehow, I don't know how, but I've managed to earn enough from show business to I'm now sitting in a big 3-story house with another house with no mortgage, all paid for by my show business career, but unfortunately owned by my ex-wife as part of the divorce settlement. And then I've got a house on the south coast of England, which has got almost no mortgage left on it. And I've got a beautiful Audi A3 2-litre FSI Sport in both countries, identical Audis in both countries. So I drive, you know, sometimes, not always, but sometimes I drive to long-term parking at Gatwick and park my beautiful Audi in the car park, and then get a plane, and then I'm met in the airport here in Budapest by my ex-wife driving an identical Audi A3 to drive me back here. And my ex-wife lets me live here, even though she now owns the property.
Ah, but you get to do gigs there. You could do a little gig in the garden, but in both places.
Well, I do. I mean, I do enjoy living in both places, and I've got identical things in both places. It's not only the Audi A3, but I've also got other things, I've got one here and one in Britain, and I like having, you know, exactly the same thing in both countries, whether it's a tray or a mug. Or even a particular print of something, or an item of clothing, and the same with stage props and stuff. I've got like all my stage props. I'm not that prop heavy, but I do have some stage props. So I've got the whole stuff here in Hungary, and then I've got the whole stuff in Britain. So, for example, next week I'm flying from Budapest to Holland, and I've got my I've got my blue velvet stage suit that's based here, and my props that are based here, and other stuff that's based here. And then another time I'll fly, like a few weeks ago, I flew from London Gatwick to Malaga and toured Andalusia and Gibraltar, and that was from the British HQ. So I had all the British blue velvet suit and props. So I've got like 2 HQs, one here and one in Britain, and I enjoy that.
But no fish and chips in Hungary.
Pardon?
No fish and chips.
You can get fish and chips here, but it's not always quite the same. It depends. You can go to like a British type place or an Australian type place, and they'll sometimes do fish and chips. But most of the fish here is river fish, and it's not the same as fish from the sea. But there are things here that are nice here, and there are things there that are nice there, and I enjoy that. It's like always being on holiday, because when I come to Britain, I'm experiencing Britain as a person who's just arrived from another country, and I notice things that I wouldn't notice if I lived there all the time. and it's like being on holiday. And I set off to drive to do a gig in Wales or Devon, and it's like, wow, you know, I'm exploring, you know, seeing the country with fresh eyes. And then when I come here and I travel to Poland or to Serbia and do a gig, it's like being on holiday. You know, it's always nice. It's because every time I change country, it's like a new, fresh experience. It's not going away on holiday.
So there you have it, guys. This is Dave Thompson. If you want to, this is what he's all about. You know where to go. You know where to get the books.
Well, I always wanted to be a traveling bum. You know, when I was a teenager, I used to read the books of Jack Kerouac, that you might have heard of. He was an American beat writer, and that was before that you had the hippies. You had the beat generation in the late 50s and early 60s, and they were sort of traveling bums who didn't want to put roots down and just wanted to lead a life traveling around, being on the road and living for today. And the beautiful thing about doing stand-up comedy is you can be a traveling bum, but also you have a job where you get paid, and you know you fly somewhere and someone meets you at the airport and drives you to your hotel. So it's a really great way of dropping out of society and being outside society, but being a traveling bum, and you just face society for 30 minutes or 40 minutes in the evening, standing behind a microphone, make the cunts laugh, and then walk off and drink free beer in the dressing room. Or hang out in the bar and try and fuck one of them.
That's what comedy's all about, guys.
That's why. I don't know what it is for you, but that's what it is for me.
No. So that's it. You make sure you buy Dave's book, or I'll sort you out. Make sure you watch his gigs. Make sure you go to his workshop where you could learn how to be an idiot, and then you can learn how to be an idiot of punchlines.
Yeah, you can be paid for being an idiot. You can be a professional idiot.
Would you say that as a comedian we're professional knobs?
A professional what?
Knobs.
A professional what? Professional
knobs. Knobs.
Knob? I thought you said nonce.
No. No.
A professional knob.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a professional vag.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. I'd rather be a professional vag than a knob.
Okay, I think that sounds better. That's more.
Yeah.
That sounds more flavour.
Yeah, that might be misleading now. That might sound like I'm a trans person or something. Mind you, that's quite fashionable, isn't it? So maybe.
Oh, no, let's not go there. Fashionable.
You've got to go with the fashions. You know, I'm getting a sex change operation next week. I don't want to, but you've got to go along with the fashion, haven't you?
Yeah, you got to stand up.
Avoid being cancelled.
Right, so you know where to go, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you give the episode a 10-star review on all platforms. Subscribe. Yeah. I'll see you guys soon.
Be nice to animals.
Exactly. Be nice to the animals. Don't be too nice, though.